Hi everyone, it's me Anna. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. Today we're doing the end of year book tag of 2025 and I'm so excited because it's always so interesting to look back on things you did, books you read, right? So today we're going to be doing exactly that. And right here next to me there's this stack of the books that are going to be included in today's book tag. I've read 46 books this year. I am currently reading a book, but we're not counting that one. Yeah, overall 46 books. To be more precise, those are 25 fantasies, 14 romances, which I think isn't completely true. First of all, I want to say that I got this genre breakdown from Fable. I kind of detached from Goodreads this year. I'm enjoying Fable right now, and the genre breakdown I got from Fable, obviously. And I don't really agree with the 14 romances. If we're talking about books that aren't set in a fantastical world and the main plot is romance, I only read 2 books like that, 2 romances, maybe 3, but I would still say 2. I think what Fable means is that I read, let's say, 2 romances, right, and 12 romanticises. Perhaps that's what it meant when it was creating this list of the genres that I read this year. Then we have 10 horrors, 10 thrillers, and 8 fictions. I totally agree with the fictions, I think, and horrors maybe. And especially when it comes to thrillers, I think most of the 10 thrillers that Fable claims I read this year are some of the Stephen King books from my 2025 reading year. Anyway, the most controversial part here is the romances, because I really did not read 14 romances. Most of these books are definitely romanticises. Let's move on to the next category, which is slightly negative, but I think it's better when you start with something negative and then slowly move towards the best read of the year. Anyway, the next category is books that didn't meet my expectations. This category is not just about books that disappointed me, but rather about the books that I had high expectations for and they just didn't live up to them. One of those books is Misery by Stephen King. Unfortunately, it's my favorite author, but this is on this list in this category. I knew what this book was about when I was just about to start reading it, but my main problem with it was that I was expecting more depth to everything that was happening in here. To me personally, this story was just torture through and through. Because you see, usually when it comes to Stephen King, I see so much in his books, not just horror, not just some frightening stuff, but there's normally so many layers to his stories. Like, I don't usually read his books to get scared or something. I never read his books for that, honestly. And I guess many of the books that I'd read before this one made me expect something more, something bigger than just what really actually happens in here. So I couldn't quite get the hype around this book. I didn't really understand it, and I know it's the genre, I know it's this like type of story, but again, knowing Stephen King, at least some of his books, I was expecting a bigger meaning behind all the torture. That's why Misery is one of the books that didn't live up to my expectations. Another book that didn't meet my expectations was Alchemized, and I don't want to be elaborating on this for too long. You can watch my November wrap-up video if you're curious about my opinion on this book. But yeah, it didn't meet my expectations simply because I didn't feel connected to the story as much as I was hoping to. I didn't connect to the minor characters, which was really frustrating. And the most frustrating thing to me was the poor explanation. Again, in my humble opinion, a lot of things were poorly explained in this book, and I wanted to like understand it all. I wanted to live this story, but I couldn't because I didn't understand every tiny detail that I thought I was meant to understand, but maybe I wasn't. You know what? I don't know. I'm still so confused with this one. The next one is a book that perfectly met all my expectations, and that is Iron Flame. Iron Flame is the second book in the Empyrean series, and I want to say that I didn't love the first book, The Fourth Wing. I didn't really enjoy this academy setting as much as I thought, or not actually thought, but hoped I would. And yeah, it was kind of boring, but I still wanted to continue the series because I know that usually, even if I didn't like the first book in the series, it kind of grows in me as I keep reading it. If it's not a duology, but if it's like a trilogy or a longer series, sometimes the second book in the series is way better to me than the first one. And I was so excited about the second book for no reason. Like I said, I didn't love the first book, so there was no reason for me to really anticipate the next book, you know? I thought that, okay, the first book wasn't the best, but I know that usually the second book is exactly what I want. Maybe that's why I was expecting something better. I enjoyed that book so much. I know it's an unpopular opinion, but I don't get the hate. To me, it seemed like it was full of action. I learned some new information about some of the characters. The ending was just the craziest cliffhanger. Absolutely loved it. Now, speaking of the books that exceeded my expectations, I actually don't know. Let me think. Okay, you know what? I think it has to be Calabasas, because before I got into that book, I'd heard so many controversial reviews. Like, it's too academic, full of just the scariest terminology. And so I was literally mentally preparing myself to read it because I thought, okay, this is not gonna be easy. It was also something new to me, so I was really scared. But I loved that book so much, and it was so easy to read. I don't get all those reviews, okay, guys? I just don't get it. Yes, it's academic. Yes, it's math heavy. I was fine with it. I think I looked up a couple of things while reading it just to understand what certain things looked like. But apart from that, everything was just so fine. I was so immersed and engaged that I didn't really pay attention to the things that made me slow down and maybe like do some not really research, but just quickly look something up. Like, there were a lot of such compelling theories and philosophical sayings that I was only glad to look it up and maybe learn some more. So yeah, I enjoyed it. It kind of exceeded my expectations, I think. The next category has 2 books in it, and those are the books with the most bittersweet endings that I read this year. And one of them is surely The Dark Tower, the last book in the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. I mean, the most bittersweet ending. Not even bittersweet, but rather controversial. I still wanted to include this book in this category. It really was bittersweet to me. I surely didn't know how to feel about it. I just accept the ending the way it is. Try not to think too much about it, because if I do, I'll just go spiraling and never come back. The next book in this category is Project Hail Mary. I think this ending, like, on one hand, it's very moving and it reflects his personality so well, but on the other hand, it's not like the most perfect ending for our main character. I think it's kind of concluded, but not really. It's slightly open, and that's why it's probably a little bittersweet to me. The next 2 are the books I can't stop thinking about. The Dark Tower, obviously. Just bear with me. The other one is House of Flame and Shadow in the Crescent City series by Sarah J. Maas. I can't stop thinking about it because, first of all, I loved it. Second of all, there was so much character development in that book. I finally have a favorite character in this series, but I can't say who, so as not to spoil things. I can't stop thinking about it because I want a continuation. I am waiting for something. I've heard that the author is planning to write 1 or 2 more books in the series, but the next one hasn't been confirmed yet, so I'm not really like waiting, but deep down I am. Now we're moving on to the prettiest covers I read this year. The first one is Carrie. I think it's so pretty. This is the special edition. I just happened to see it on the shelf at the store. The next prettiest cover I read this year is alchemized. It's so gothic. I love it. Also, the sprayed edges are so beautiful. And yeah, I just think this cover conveys the mood of the story overall really well. And the next prettiest cover is Iron Flame. To be honest, I don't think there's anything like very special about this cover, but I just like the shimmering and the color, and I think it's pretty. Also Crebasis. Like again, nothing really special, but just the design of this picture is nice. And also, you know, how it portrays the story, like the message, even though I think there's so many messages in the story. The next category is my most favorite main character, and I think that is the main character from Silvercloak. I don't remember her name, to be honest. Yeah, she's my favorite main character, but I don't remember her name. Oh, it's Seth. Okay, her name's Seth, and the thing is, I don't think I can relate to her like whatsoever, but I liked her a lot while reading this because I feel like the author made me so sympathetic towards her because of all the situations our main character keeps getting into in this book and all the decisions she has to make, and those decisions are so ugly. Like there's no right or wrong, and none of them is the best decision ever, but she has to make them in here. And the way she thinks about her decisions, the way she considers all the people in her life and all the circumstances she's surrounded with, made me sympathize her, made me respect her in a way. So yeah, she wins this year. The next category is my most favorite side character, and I honestly can't choose between these three. They all participate in everything in this duology, but I think they can still be considered side characters because there's clearly one like most main character in this duology. Anyway, they are Matteo, Flick, and Jean. Speaking of Flick and Jean, I just loved the chemistry, and Matteo just played such a significant role. I started caring much more for him in the second book, which is The Steeping of Blood. I just can't choose between them, but they're my favorites of this year. They're so different, but so interesting to read about. And there's another duology that has my most favorite side characters. That is the Shaffer-King duology by Rachel Gillick. Elm. It's the same like with Matteo in this duology. I loved him in the second book, like almost everyone else who's read this duology, I think. He was just so witty and hilarious. He was such a fascinating character to read. He just added so much to the story, to the overall mood of the duology, especially the second book. The next one is an interesting one, the book that grew on me by the end, and that is Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V. Schwab. And to be quite honest, I almost hated the first half of this book, or at least the first like quarter. I loved the overall mood. I loved the writing. The writing is so beautiful in this one. I tapped quite a few quotes in here, and they are just so beautiful, but at the same time this story has such a dark vibe to it. I absolutely loved that, but the first half of the book was just so boring to me, and I understand that this is not the type of book where you should expect like the most twisty plot ever, not at all. Maybe I just couldn't connect to the characters. Anyway, in the second half of this book I started to feel much more invested. Not that like some sort of plot suddenly kicked in. It's not that, but it's just, I don't know, there's something about the story that made me feel so much for one particular character, and I got so emotional by the end of this book. I was really surprised. I did not expect that. Sometimes the plot seemed more engaging, sometimes it was too slow moving. This book is in this category because it started off as a 2-star probably, and it ended up being a 4-star read. I now think though that I exaggerated a little bit with the 4-star rating, but maybe 3.75 is what this book deserves from my point of view. I don't know, somehow at the end of this book, all the atmosphere, all the writing, all the stuff that one of our main characters just was forced to undergo. Yeah, all of that together just made me feel a lot, and I got so immersed in this story. Unfortunately, only at the end. This book is somehow very haunting. While I was reading the first half, I didn't think it would impress me that much, but eventually it did. I wouldn't really recommend this book though, because again, like, overall, I didn't love it. But at the end of this book, I was just feeling a lot. It's a haunting story, a dark one as well, and beautifully written. A very controversial one. Like, I'm so mixed on this one, but it definitely deserves to be in this category. The next category is about my new favorite author or authors. They are Rachel Gillick. I discovered her this year and I'm so happy that I did. I read The Shefferkin duology by her and The Night and the Moth, the first book in her newest duology. Her fantasies are the most gothic, moody. They are so immersive with the most unique magic systems. I'm in love with her books. The next author on this list is R.F. Kuang. I'm not entirely sure about her, only because I've only read one book by her. I absolutely loved it, as you probably already know. And I am gonna read some more books by her, but I think I can't really tell you that she's my new favorite author until I read at least 2 or 3 books. But Rachel Gillick is just 100% my new favorite author. Now, Welcome to the Hunam Dong Bookshop is the most good-feel book. Here we follow the owner of a bookshop, a woman that decided to follow her dreams and start this small business. So she opens this bookshop. At first she works alone, but then more and more people start coming into her life. It's about this small business, some things that keep coming at her doorstep, at the threshold of this bookshop. It's also about all these characters getting intertwined and how they influence each other, how their experiences influence each other's. And I don't want to tell you much about this. I think if you're curious about it, you should go in blind and just enjoy everything this book can give you. It has just the most cozy setting, the most cozy vibes. It's this type of a book where you're reading it and you don't want it to end. You don't want to leave this world. You just want to keep staying in it. You just want to keep watching these characters interacting with each other, contributing to each other's lives, sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally. And it's just so whimsical and cozy and character driven. I would say this book is for, first of all, book lovers, second of all, coffee lovers. So if you're a coffee lover, or if you're a book lover, or if you just want to read a nice cozy book, we're almost at the finish point of this video. We only have 2 categories left, and the next category is the worst books of this year. The story of Arthur Trulove. That book promised me to be a very moving story, and I got nothing but the most awkward writing I have ever read. If you want to hear some more thoughts on this book, you can go watch my November wrap-up video. So yeah, that's it. I don't want to talk much about that book. The next book in this category is Homesicking. It was such a disappointment for me. I know how many people loved this book, and I'd read historical fiction before, but Homesicking just wasn't for me. Yeah, if you don't know, it's a historical fiction and we follow 2 characters. There's also a lot of time jumps, which I wasn't the biggest fan of because it just made me confused at times. But most of all, I just didn't like the characters themselves. They felt so flat to me, and the plot overall just felt flat. Yeah, I just wasn't for me. Just wasn't for me. I was bored. I barely finished that book, honestly. So yeah, that is Homesicking. And finally, the last category, actually not the last one. Wait, we have 2 more, but the very last one is gonna be very quick. So yeah. Anyway, the next category is all my 5-star reads of 2025. House of Sky and Breath and House of Flame and Shadow, which I already mentioned today. The second and third books in the Crescent City series Absolutely love them. You see, this is the same situation with like Iron Flame in the Empyrean series by Rebecca Yarros. I didn't love the first books in the series, but I did absolutely love the second ones. And in the Crescent City series, I also loved the third one. I don't want to elaborate much on it. I just want to say that it's an urban fantasy with a complex world-building murder mystery if we're talking about the first book. My next 5-star read was Welcome to the Human Bookshop, which we just discussed, so I don't think I need to add anything else to it. The next one is Song of Susanna, which is the 6th book in the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. I already mentioned the Dark Tower too. The only thing I will say is that in Song of Susanna, our main character are very often, if not throughout the entire book, were separated. That book is kind of divided into a few POVs. Each is on their own quest. All these quests are obviously related to one big goal that our main characters have been pursuing. It kept me engaged all the way through. The next book on this list is Goodnight Tokyo, a Japanese novel. Here we follow many characters. Each of them has an unusual job, occupation. It's a short novel, but it feels very rich. And so basically all these characters get intertwined at some certain points of the story, and yeah, I love this book. The next one is Iron Flame, which I already talked about, so I don't think I need to elaborate on it anymore. The next book, actually duology, The Shepherd King, both Wonder Window and Two Twisted Crowns, are absolute 5-star reads. If I were to give you the aesthetic of this duology, I would say kingdoms, cards, magic system. The magic system based on cards, how cool is that? Forests, betrayal, sickness, virus, monsters. Okay, you don't need anything else, just go read it. The next 5-star read is The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillick. Like I said, the first book in her newest duology. Just briefly, it's about divination. So we follow a diviner who can see the future by getting these like visions. Yeah, it's a very cool idea, and one day the girls that our diviner has been working with start disappearing, so she goes on this journey to find them. The next one is Doctor Sleep by Stephen King, which is the sequel to The Shining, and I wasn't like obsessed with The Shining, to be honest. I didn't hate it, I still enjoyed it. I enjoyed like the biggest part of it, I want to say, but it wasn't my favorite. Doctor Sleep though, such a cool story. I loved everything about this book. I loved the villains. I think it was really creative to write them the way he did in this book. I loved our main character's arc, just amazing. I love the connection between our two main characters. Actually, there's two, but you know, the other one isn't like introduced to you right away, so yeah, I don't want to spoil anything, but I love the connection between them, and I thought this story was just so touching, adventurous, and basically the villains in this book feed with kids' mental powers. So they catch the kids that have these like mental abilities. That is such a cool idea. I loved it so much. The next book is A Steeping of Blood, the second book in this duology. The first book is A Tempest of Tea. Absolutely incredible. It explores themes of colonialism, vampires, belonging. I love this book so much. It was so action heavy, it was so tense, I couldn't put it down. These books had such a strong impact on me. In the first book, A Tempest of Tea, we follow our main character who runs this tea shop slash blood house. At daytime it's a tea shop, at nighttime it's a blood house, and she's this criminal in the city. One day she almost gets caught by the government, and this duology is very heist heavy. I would say that the second book is more focused on vampires than the first one. The first one is more about this heist, you know, more about these like plans our main characters make, plans, strategies, you know, all of that. So many secrets, so many theories. Such a good duology. A little bittersweet ending. Yeah, it was very sad, but it's still a happy ending, I think, to some extent. So yeah, with no doubt, a 5-star read. The last 5-star read of this year is The Survivor Wants to Die at the End. I don't want to talk much about this book now because I read it in December. I think I'll elaborate on it in my probably next video or so in my December wrap-up, but this was so good. And finally, the last category, my ultimate 6-star read of 2025, which is Calabasas by R.F. Kuang. I can't find enough words to convey all my thoughts and emotions. I will just say that this book has so many layers to it, and yes, it's very academic. And yeah, it's about two students descending to hell to save their professor because they need recommendation letters from him. First of all, the academy setting. There's a lot of flashbacks in this book on this academia life of our main character and what she had to go through in the past as a female student. Speaking of the hell that R.F. Kuang created in this book, I loved it so much. I was immersed. I am truly in love with all the creatures, all the settings that R.F. Kuang created, and it's so philosophical. That's why I love this book so much, because it's both fantasy and philosophy, and I loved it. The beautiful thing about this book is that we all can find something different in here, because like I said, there's so many layers to this story. It's not just academia, it's philosophy. It's this like entertaining, fantastical world at the same time. It's very math heavy, but it wasn't a problem for me because I was so immersed in the plot that everything was easy for me to comprehend. And yeah, at times I had to slow down, give myself some time to think it over, but it was very enjoyable. All those moments I had to slow down and think were enjoyable. The entire experience of reading this book was incredible. So much philosophy about hell, what souls go through when they end up in hell, how they can get out of it, and how it's all connected to this academia life. It's just incredible. The best read of the year, and probably of my entire life even, or maybe at least one of the best reads in my life. That is Calabasas. Okay guys, that being said, I think we are pretty much done for today. It was very nice and interesting to look back on some of the books I read this year and kind of share all those emotions and opinions with you. I hope you enjoyed this video just like I did. Let me know in the comments your best or maybe even worst reads of 2025. And happy holidays. I hope you're having a good festive holiday time, and I will see you in the next video.